The Last Guardian. The massive structure hung in space like a tarnished jewel, its surface scarred by centuries of micro-impacts and cosmic radiation. Kethral's research vessel drifted closer, his sensors probing the ancient human installation with careful precision. Through the main viewport, he could see the derision in his assistant Mira's expression. Her four eyes narrowed in that particular way that showed she thought this was another waste of their department's resources. Another human relic, she clicked, mandibles twitching. The council won't be pleased that you're spending time on this. Primitive architecture. Kethral adjusted his atmospheric suit, his scaled fingers dancing across the controls with practiced ease. The humans weren't primitive, Mira. They were different. That's not the same thing. The installation was officially designated as Defense Platform X-227, but the local species had taken to calling it the Rust Giant. It had been abandoned for over 3 centuries, since the mysterious disappearance of humanity from this sector of space. Most considered it nothing more than space debris, a relic of a failed civilization that had reached too far, too fast. But Kethral knew better. 20 years of studying human artifacts had taught him one crucial lesson. Humans never did anything without multiple purposes in mind. Their technology might appear crude, even simplistic to modern sensibilities, but it always held hidden depths. Preparing for EVA, he announced, ignoring Mira's exasperated sigh. Maintain position at 500 meters. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss. Kethral pushed off gently, his suit's thrusters carrying him toward the installation's main access port. The massive doorway was sealed, its surface covered in warning symbols that his translation software struggled to decode. Getting some unusual readings, Mira's voice crackled through his comm. There's a power signature. Faint, but present. That shouldn't be possible after all this time. Kethral smiled inside his helmet. Humans built things to last, Mira. Their engineering might not be beautiful, but it's persistent. He reached the access panel, brushing away accumulated space dust. Like those bunkers we found on Mars last year, still maintaining atmosphere after 500 years. The panel beneath his fingers hummed to life, ancient displays flickering with a dim red glow. Most archaeologists would have already declared this a dead site, but Kethral had learned to be patient with human technology. Their systems often had redundancies within redundancies, backup power sources that could last centuries. Professor, Mira's voice had lost its edge of disdain, replaced by professional curiosity. I'm detecting similar power signatures from other sections of the installation. They appear to be responding to your presence. Kethral's hearts quickened. Send the data to my suit display. The readings confirmed what he'd suspected. This wasn't just a defensive platform. The power signatures were too complex, too intelligently distributed. This was never just a weapon, Mira. It's something else entirely. The access panel suddenly brightened, and a holographic interface materialized before him. The symbols were ancient human military code, but he recognized enough to understand the basic message. Authorization required. Mira, begin recording everything. The council's going to want to see this. His fingers moved across the holographic controls, applying the decryption protocols he'd developed over years of studying human interfaces. They built this place to be found. They wanted someone to discover it. A new message appeared. GD-NTACSHAN HED. A beam of light passed over him. And for a moment, Kethral feared he'd triggered some ancient defense system. Instead, the massive doors began to cycle open with a grace that belied their age. Professor, Mira's voice was barely a whisper. The power readings, they're growing exponentially. Whatever this place is, it's waking up. Inside the airlock, lights flickered to life, revealing corridors that stretched deep into the station's heart. But what caught Kethral's attention were the words now displayed clearly above the inner doorway, finally translated by his software. To those who follow after, welcome to Sanctuary Station. May you use its gifts wisely. Kethral touched his comm. Mira, Contact the Council. Tell them. He paused, watching as more systems came online throughout the massive structure. Tell them we found something that changes everything we thought we knew about humanity. As he floated through the airlock, Kethril couldn't help but smile. The humans had been gone for centuries, but they'd left behind more than just abandoned relics. They'd left a mystery, carefully preserved and waiting for the right moment to be discovered. And if there was one thing he'd learned about human mysteries, they were never simple, never exactly what they appeared to be. This station wasn't just a defensive platform. It was a message in a bottle, cast into the cosmic ocean by a species that had somehow known they would need to leave something behind. The question was, what exactly had they left, and why had they wanted it to be found? Behind him, the outer doors sealed with a soft hiss, and deeper in the station, more systems began to awaken from their centuries-long slumber. Awakening. The station's corridors seemed to breathe as ancient ventilation systems stirred to life. Kethril moved cautiously through the awakening structure, his suit's sensors recording everything. The air was becoming breathable, another impossibility in a station that had been abandoned for centuries. Mira, are you seeing this? He paused at a junction where holographic displays were flickering to life, showing station schematics in fading blue light. Confirmed, Professor. The station's environmental systems are regenerating atmosphere at an unprecedented rate. And, she hesitated, we're detecting quantum signatures we can't identify. The Council is concerned. Of course they were. The Galactic Council had spent centuries dismissing human technology as crude and inefficient. This station's mere existence challenged that narrative. A soft chime echoed through the corridor, and a voice spoke, not in any modern language, but in ancient human English. Kethril's translator worked quickly. Primary systems online. Welcome, Researcher Kethril. Your genetic profile has been added to authorized personnel. He froze. Mira, did you? Yes, Professor. The station knows who you are. That's impossible. The AI restrictions were put in place after the humans disappeared, Kethril finished. This system predates those laws. It's been waiting, watching, all this time. He continued deeper into the station, passing rooms filled with technology that defied his understanding. Not because it was more advanced, much of it appeared deceptively simple, but because it worked in ways that violated what his people considered possible. Professor, Mira's voice was tense. The Council is demanding we withdraw. They're citing AI containment protocols. Kethril was about to respond when a new hologram appeared before him, a human figure, feminine in appearance, dressed in what his research identified as a military uniform. I am Commander Sarah Chen, or rather, a quantum imprint of her consciousness. I've been waiting a long time for someone like you, Researcher Kethril. His heart's raced. An actual human AI construct. But the records say humans never achieved true AI. The hologram smiled. We achieved exactly what we intended to achieve, Researcher. Nothing more, nothing less. Humanity's greatest strength was knowing when to stop, when to hold back. This station isn't powered by true AI. It's powered by something far more reliable, human foresight. The hologram gestured, and the walls around them became transparent, revealing the true scale of the station's interior. Massive machines hummed with quiet energy, their purpose still unclear. Your people call this the Rust Giant, Sarah continued. A failed weapon, abandoned by a failed species. The truth is more complex. This station was never meant to be a weapon. It's a shield, a guardian created to protect this sector of space from something we knew was coming. What's coming? Kethril asked, even as new alarms began to sound throughout the station. The reason we left, Sarah answered, her expression grave. We didn't disappear, Researcher Kethril. We withdrew. We scattered ourselves across the galaxy, hiding our true numbers, our true capabilities, because we saw what was approaching from the dark between galaxies. We left these stations as a gift to those who would come after us. The hologram waved a hand, and a new display appeared. A mass of darkness moving between the stars, still distant but undeniably real. Your council's sensors will detect them soon. They're what your people will call the Void Swarm, though we had other names for them. This station is one of many we left behind, a network of shields to protect all sentient life, not just humanity. Kethril stared at the readings, his scientific mind racing to process the implications. Why show this to me? Why now? Because, researcher Kethril, in all your years studying our artifacts, you've never once dismissed us as primitive. You sought to understand rather than judge. We left these stations with recognition protocols. They would only awaken for those who showed wisdom rather than arrogance. New displays were activating throughout the station, showing similar installations across the sector, all beginning to awaken. The council won't accept this, he said. They'll try to shut it down. Sarah's hologram smiled again, but this time there was a hint of that legendary human determination in her expression. They can try, but humanity built these stations to last, to resist any attempt to deactivate them. The question is, researcher Kethril, will you help us? Will you help protect not just your people, but all people? Before he could answer, Mira's voice cut through on the comm. Professor, the council's ships are approaching. They're demanding we evacuate immediately. Kethril looked at the hologram of Sarah Chen, at the readings showing the approaching darkness, and at the station's systems. Human systems, built with that unique combination of durability, redundancy, and hidden complexity that he always admired. He made his decision. Mira, tell the council. He paused, straightening to his full height. Tell them that humanity left us a gift, and it's time we learned how to use it. The station hummed around him, its ancient systems fully awake for the first time in centuries, ready to fulfill their original purpose, not to wage war, but to protect, to defend, to stand guard against the darkness between the stars. The coming storm. The council ships hung in formation around the station like angry insects, their weapons powered but not yet targeting. Kethril stood in what he now knew was the station's command center, watching as Sarah Chen's hologram interfaced with systems that had been dormant for centuries. They're afraid. Mira's voice came through clearly now that she'd moved their research vessel inside the station's protective field. The council has ordered a quarantine of this entire sector. Of course they're afraid. Sarah's hologram responded, her form flickering as she directed power to the station's outer defenses. Fear of the unknown is a universal constant, but fear shouldn't drive us to reject help when it's offered. Kethril studied the tactical displays showing the approaching void swarm. The mass of darkness had grown larger, more defined. Even at their current distance, the entity was consuming light itself, creating a wound in space that no known technology could explain. 3 days, he muttered, checking the calculations again. 3 days until first contact with the outer systems. The council is demanding explanations. Mira reported, her own fear evident in her clicking mandibles. They're citing 17 different containment protocols. Professor, they're threatening to brand you a traitor to all civilized species. Kethril's scaled hands moved across the human design controls, which had adapted to his alien physiology with remarkable efficiency. Show me the network, he commanded, and Sarah's hologram complied. The command center filled with a 3-dimensional map of the sector. Dozens of stations like this one glowed with renewed energy, forming a complex web of overlapping fields. Each station had activated in sequence after their discovery of the first, just as humanity had planned centuries ago. Remarkable, he breathed. They knew the council would resist. These stations are positioned to activate regardless of interference. Sarah nodded. Humanity understood bureaucracy well enough to know it would be an obstacle. That's why the stations were designed to operate independently if necessary. But they work better together, like humanity itself. A new alarm sounded, and one of the tactical displays flashed red. The council ships were powering up their main weapons. They're going to try to destroy the station, Mira whispered. No, Kethril corrected, watching as new readings appeared. They're going to try. But humanity built this station to survive much worse than Council weapons. As if in response to his words, the first Council ship fired. The energy beam struck the station's outer hull and vanished into a field of distorted spacetime that hadn't been there seconds before. Adaptive defense screens, Sarah explained, a touch of pride in her artificial voice. The technology your people dismissed as primitive. It was simplified by design. Complexity breeds failure points. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. More Council ships opened fire, their weapons having no more effect than the first. Each attack was absorbed, analyzed, and countered by defenses that seemed to evolve with each passing second. Professor, Mira's voice had changed, taking on a note of awe. The station. It's not just defending itself, it's protecting our ship too. And, she paused, checking her readings. It's protecting the Council ships from their own weapon reflections. Of course it is, Sarah said softly. This station was built to protect all life, not just human interests. That's what your people never understood about humanity. We didn't build weapons. We built shields. A new alert flashed across the tactical displays. The void swarm had accelerated, somehow aware it had been detected. First contact would now occur in less than 2 days. We're running out of time, Kethril announced, turning to address the hologram directly. The Council won't listen to me. I'm just an archaeologist, but they might listen to you, to humanity's own words. Sarah's hologram smiled. Now you understand. This station isn't just a defense platform. It's a library, a record of everything humanity learned about the Void Swarm. And you, Kethril, with your lifetime of studying human artifacts, are perhaps the only being in this sector qualified to interpret that knowledge. The station shuddered as the Council ships launched a coordinated attack. Again, the defensive screens absorbed the assault, but this time they did something unexpected. They began to pulse with visible patterns, complex geometric shapes that stretched out into space. What's happening? Mira asked, her sensors struggling to analyze the phenomenon. The station is communicating, Kethril realized, watching as the patterns repeated. It's using the Council's own attacks to power a message they can't ignore. On the tactical displays, the Council ships began to power down their weapons. The patterns had done what words could not, demonstrated the station's true purpose in a language of pure mathematics and physics. They're requesting communication, Mira reported, her voice filled with disbelief. Kethril looked at Sarah's hologram. They'll want proof. About the Void Swarm, about humanity's intentions. Then we'll give them proof, Sarah replied. Humanity left more than just weapons and shields, Professor. We left our story, our warnings, and most importantly, our hope. The question is, will they listen in time? The tactical display flashed again. The Void Swarm had accelerated once more, as if sensing the awakening of humanity's defensive network. The time for debate was running out. In the space around the station, the Council ships moved into new positions, no longer threatening, but waiting, watching, perhaps, finally, ready to learn. Show them everything, Kethril commanded, and the station's archives began to open, revealing humanity's true legacy to the galaxy. Legacy of Steel. The station's main archive chamber was a cathedral of light and data. Holographic displays filled the vast space, showing the history that humanity had left behind, not as conquerors or victims, but as guardians. They knew for decades before they left. Kethril explained to the assembled Council representatives, who had finally agreed to board the station. Their environmental suits seemed unnecessary now that the station's systems had fully activated, but old fears died hard. The Void Swarm wasn't just approaching, it was hunting. The central hologram showed the fall of humanity's outer colonies, not to war or disaster as history had recorded, but to a strategic withdrawal. Each planet evacuated in perfect order, leaving behind these stations as silent sentinels. Impossible, declared Council leader Vax. their crystalline form shimmering with agitation. No species could predict a threat centuries in advance. No technology could remain operational for so long. Sarah's hologram appeared beside Kethral. Humanity's greatest strength was never our technology, Council Leader. It was our ability to plan for failure. Every system in this station was designed to be repaired by the materials around it. It's not just a machine, it's a self-sustaining ecosystem. As if to demonstrate, a maintenance drone emerged from a wall panel, its simple design belying its effectiveness as it repaired minor damage from the Council's earlier attack. The drone was built from common elements, its programming basic enough to survive centuries of isolation. "Look at these readings," Mira said, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial fear. "The station doesn't just defend, it adapts, it learns, but not through air, through something else. Quantum imprinting," Kethral explained, understanding finally dawning. The humans didn't trust true AI, but they found a way to encode their own problem-solving abilities into the station's systems. Each solution creates new possibilities, like human creativity itself. The tactical displays suddenly flared red. The void swarm had accelerated again, now less than a day away from the outer systems. Its massive form had resolved into something that defied description, a living darkness that consumed everything in its path. "We've detected 3 more swarms approaching from different vectors," Sarah announced, just as humanity predicted. They don't just hunt, they herd their prey. The Council representatives huddled together, their various species showing fear in different but unmistakable ways. "How can we fight such a thing?" Vax demanded. "Even with these stations, the swarm's power is beyond anything we've encountered." "We don't fight it," Kethral said, understanding flowing through him as he read the human archives. "We redirect it. The stations aren't weapons, they're parts of a massive navigation system. Humanity didn't run from the swarm. They found a way to guide it away from inhabited space." Sarah nodded, her holographic form expanding to show the network of stations. Each station generates a quantum field that the swarm perceives as unpalatable. Together, they create channels, like rivers in space, directing the swarm away from living systems. "But the network is incomplete," Mira observed, studying the displays. "There are gaps that the Council's ships could fill," Kethral finished. "Humanity left us the framework, but they knew the galaxy's species would need to work together to complete it. That's why the stations waited for the right moment, not just for the threat to arrive, but for us to be ready to cooperate." The Council representatives looked at each other, centuries of political divisions weighing against the immediate threat. Vax stepped forward, their crystalline form catching the light of the displays. "If what you say is true," they said slowly, "why didn't humanity tell us? Why leave these stations hidden? Would you have believed them?" Sarah asked gently. "Would you have accepted help from a species you considered primitive? Or would you have tried to seize the stations, to improve them with your own technology?" Vax's crystal structure dimmed slightly, the equivalent of a shameful blush in their species. "We would not have listened," they admitted. "But you're listening now," Kethral said, turning to the tactical displays. "The question is, will you act? The stations need your ships to complete the network. Humanity left us the tools, but we must choose to use them." A new alarm sounded. The void swarm had changed course again, now heading directly for the most populated systems in the sector. They had hours, at most. "The stations will protect your ships," Sarah assured them. "The same defensive screens that stop your weapons will shield you from the swarm. But you must decide now. Humanity made their choice centuries ago. They sacrificed their presence in this sector to give us this chance. What will your choice be?" The Council representatives looked at the approaching darkness, then at each other. Centuries of division and distrust hung in the balance against extinction itself. Vax straightened to their full height. "Send the codes to all Council ships," they commanded. "We will complete humanity's network. And perhaps we will learn from their example." As the Council ships began moving into position, Guided by the station's quantum fields, Kethril watched the tactical displays with growing hope. Humanity's legacy wasn't one of dominance or submission. It was one of protection, of foresight, of understanding that survival meant more than just preserving one's own species. The stations hummed with renewed energy as the network began to form. In the distance, the void swarm approached, unaware that its prey had finally learned to stand together. Echoes of humanity. The void swarm filled the tactical displays like an ocean of darkness, its massive form distorting the very fabric of space. Council ships moved into their final positions, their hulls now glowing with the same quantum field that protected the human stations. Kethril stood at the command center, watching as centuries of human planning finally came to fruition. Field synchronization at 93%, Mira reported, her voice steady despite the enormity of what they faced. The network is nearly complete. Sarah's hologram appeared beside them, her form more solid now that all stations were fully powered. Humanity spent decades perfecting these fields. The swarm doesn't just consume matter. It feeds on quantum potential itself. But every predator can be guided away from its prey. The first tendrils of the swarm reached the outer edge of the network. On the displays, Kethril could see the quantum fields responding, creating channels of altered spacetime that the swarm instinctively avoided. It was like watching water flow around stones in a stream. Natural, inevitable, remarkable. Vax whispered, their crystalline form resonating with the station's energy. The stations aren't fighting the swarm at all. They're suggesting another path. That's what we never understood about humanity, Kethril said, watching as the massive entity began to change course. We saw their technology as crude because it didn't dominate nature. It worked with it instead. A sudden alarm blared through the station. A section of the network was fluctuating, the quantum field weakening. One of the council ships had suffered a power failure, creating a gap in their defenses. The swarm is sensing the weakness, Sarah announced. It will divert through that gap unless we can stabilize the field. Vax moved to the communications panel. The ship's captain reports critical system failure. They can't maintain the field. Kethril studied the tactical displays, remembering everything he'd learned about human ingenuity. The station can extend its own field to cover the gap, he said, but it would mean diverting power from life support. We have minutes to evacuate. No, Sarah corrected, her hologram flickering as she accessed deeper systems. Humanity planned for this too. Professor, do you remember what I said about the stations being self-sustaining ecosystems? Understanding dawned on him. The maintenance drones, they're not just for repairs. They're part of the field generation system, Sarah confirmed. Humanity didn't build single points of failure. Quick, order all stations to launch their drone networks. Thousands of small maintenance units emerged from the stations, their simple designs belying their true purpose. As they moved into position around the failing council ship, their combined systems created a web of quantum energy that filled the gap in the network. The void swarm recoiled from the completed barrier, its vast form beginning to follow the channels they had created. Like a river changing course, the entity that had threatened all life in the sector was being guided away from inhabited space. It's working, Mira breathed, watching the tactical displays. The swarm is following the quantum channels exactly as humanity predicted. Not predicted, Kethril corrected. Tested. The archives show they used these same techniques to protect their evacuation. Every station, every system, every drone. They were all proven effective before humanity withdrew. But why leave? Vax asked, their crystalline form shifting with confusion. If they had this technology, this understanding, why not stay and fight? Sarah's hologram smiled. Because humanity's greatest discovery wasn't technology, it was perspective. We realized that true strength isn't about domination or control. It's about protection, about creating systems that work together, about turning even the darkest threats into opportunities for cooperation. The tactical displays showed the void swarm now fully diverted, its massive form following the quantum channels out of the sector. The network of stations and ships pulsed with shared energy, maintaining the fields that would ensure the entity never returned. The Council was wrong about humanity. Vax admitted, their form glowing with newfound respect. We saw their disappearance as a failure, their technology as primitive, but they were beyond us all along. No, Kethril said, watching as the stations began recalibrating, preparing for any future threats. They weren't beyond us. They were waiting for us to catch up. Every station, every system was designed to be understood, to be used by other species. Humanity didn't want to rule the galaxy. They wanted to protect it, to give us the tools to protect ourselves. Sarah's hologram nodded. And now you have those tools. The stations will remain, ready to defend against the swarm or any other threat. But their greatest purpose has already been fulfilled. What purpose is that? Mira asked. To bring us together, Kethril answered, looking around at the assembled representatives of the Council, at the combined fleet of ships that had formed the network. Humanity's last gift wasn't technology or weapons or even protection. It was unity. As if in response, new data began flowing through the station's archives. Information about other sectors, other stations, other species learning the same lessons. Humanity's network wasn't just a defense system. It was a bridge between civilizations, a foundation for cooperation that would last centuries. The void swarm vanished into deep space, guided away from all inhabited worlds by the quantum channels they had created together. But its passage had left something behind, not destruction, but understanding. The galaxy's species had finally learned what humanity had known all along, that the greatest power isn't in standing alone, but in standing together. In the command center of the ancient station, Kethril watched as Council ships began coordinating with the maintenance drones, learning to work with the human systems rather than trying to control them. It was a small step, but like everything humanity had built, it was meant to last. Sarah's hologram looked out at the stars, her expression peaceful. "Welcome to humanity's true legacy," she said softly. "Not as conquerors or victims, but as guardians. The question now is, what will you build with it?" The station hummed around them, its ancient systems working in perfect harmony with the newest Council technology, a bridge between past and future, between species and stars, between fear and hope. In the end, humanity's greatest achievement wasn't surviving the darkness. It was teaching others how to face it together.